Welcome back to another video in our series around about building your own app like Airbnb. Now in the previous video we've obviously just went ahead and added the ability to upload apartments, and I've went ahead and added several more in. So we've now got 3 apartments here on our app. One quick correction that I wanted to point out from the previous video. We set up this little workflow to update our apartment and add in a main image on the first upload. I did notice that that wasn't working very well, so I've changed it to a slightly different one where I've now added this new yes or no field to the database called main image set. So I've added that here under apartments. So there's now this variable called main image set. It's a yes or no, it's a boolean. And when we create our new apartment, by default I'm setting that to false, which is essentially saying at this stage in the process, in the new apartment screen, the main image has not been set yet. And so when we create our when we create our first image upload, we do that. We then have this second one which updates the apartment, which I've already got in. But as well as putting in the main image, what it now does is set main image to true. And then we just have this little if statement in here that says when the main image set is false, then run this action. I.e., if the main image has not been set yet because it's set to false, then run this action, upload the main image and set it to true. And of course, if it's already set to true, then it won't do anything. And so that's pretty good because it means it will make sure your main image gets uploaded to the apartment for use elsewhere in Adalo. And at the same time, I've come in here and I've deleted the update action out of here entirely because, let's be honest, we don't need it anymore. So anyway, coming back to the main throttle, what we're going to do now is create the main search interface for our Airbnb app here, and we're also going to create the ability to book a stay, and this is where things start to get very interesting. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over here and just grab a nice simple list, and I'll drag that over there and pop it right in the middle. I pull it over just slightly, make sure the lines are all lining up, and I'm also going to go and grab a input. So I'm going to go to forms and fields, I'm going to grab a text input and pop it there. Now let's zoom in a little bit and see what's going on. So essentially what I want, and you could rearrange this slightly if you wanted to, whatever way, but what I want to do is have a nice big search box that the user can type in what they're looking for, be that, let's say they're looking for flats in London or something like that. And I also want to then just have that filter this list. So I'm going to call this my search field. So we'll call this search field. And the type is set to normal. We're just looking for normal text, a placeholder. I can just put search destinations. I've not spelt that right. Search destinations. And I'm not going to set a default value, but I'm going to edit the style slightly. I want to try and give this a little bit of good looks. I'm going to set this padding to 40, and that'll push the search text right in, as you can see. And we'll give it a little bit of rounding as well. It's currently at 4. Let's try setting that to 12, see how that looks. Click off. That looks brilliant. All right, and then I'm going to hit the little plus sign. I'm going to look for, under buttons, we've got a little icon. Now the icon is clickable. I don't want to click it, but it is there if I want to. I'm just going to use my arrow keys to slowly nudge that to where I want it to be. You can see it's moving. It actually kind of looks like the guy's cycling across it, doesn't it? So I've got that there, and you can change the colour of that and stuff. I could make that, for example, Airbnb red, like that. The cycling icon is just a default. It kind of works here, to be honest. So you could leave it in. I'm going to go for a search icon just to kind of keep the look and feel. But something like a cyclist would actually work pretty well there, given its travel. So we've got a list. We're then going to say, well, this is a list of apartments. And it's going to be all apartments, but we're going to filter it. Now, this is where you have to decide exactly what you want your search box to filter. You could have multiple things, but I'm just going to go for, let's search by the city. I'm going to say that should be equal to, and I can go to form inputs and put the search field. So whatever shows up in this list should be equal to whatever is in the search field. Now, you could give it a default value if you want, so that there's always a list there by default. You could put London, and that's always going to bring up London apartments. All of the apartments I've saved just for East are all based in London, so that probably makes it a little bit too easy. So we can put that there. You could also put a piece of text in, you could put like a big bit of text in the middle that's only visible when that form input is not set, and that just says, like nothing found, for example. But I'll leave that there for now. And if you're looking for a bit more inspiration, when you add a screen, Adalo has this pre-built search list, so you can get some more inspiration for exactly how to make it look in there. Other than that, it looks like we're more or less ready to go. We could add, a little bit of shadow or something like that, so we give that a little bit of a drop down. But, broadly, I think that looks good and ready to go. So we'll just edit some of the variables that we've got in here. So where it says text, I'm quite happy with apartment name, but I do want to change the subtitle just to say the city, and again, a little bit like what I did for the hosts list, I'm just going to put the rating in here. So the rating out of 5. I'm going to get rid of the icon. One of the things you could do on our how to build a sort of your own version of Twitter video, I showed you how you could do favoriting. So you could add a little like heart up there and then let the user kind of favourite all the apartments they want to be able to come back to later. So a few things you can do to enhance this build. I'm going to take it off for now, but there are clearly a few things you can do. And then for the image, it's going to automatically take it from the apartment's main image, which is what we want to happen. That's brilliant. That's a good thing. You could also add in some more columns, but I quite like having the 2 that you can scroll up and down. And clearly, the Adalo will add in more if there's more to come. So that's what our basic search screen is going to look like. One other thing you could do, I mentioned a component earlier that I downloaded just to show you. You do have this multi-select drop-down field. So you could use this to create a filter. You'd have to add in different filterable items like amenities, etc. But you could do this to create a filter that says, right, okay, I'm only looking for, X number of bedrooms or a place that's got a hot tub, etc. So you can make this really customizable. But we're not going to do that on this particular video because there's a lot of ground to cover. But do feel free to ask us in the community if you're struggling with that. Anyway, what we're going to say is we're going to add an action so that whenever anything is clicked on this list, it's going to create a new screen. And that is going to be the apartment details screen. I don't need to put screen, I don't know why I typed that. And so that will spawn over here. Drag that back a little bit just for neatness. Now, what I can do is I can come in, take my image, little component over here, and put that in there. And so if I wanted to add just a single, apartment image, I could do that. But remember, we've just went into the effort of saving loads of different images, so we can actually delete that, and we can come in here and go to installed, and we can grab this image slider. Now I believe this isn't made by Adalo. I think it's actually made by a third party. Oh no, it is made by Adalo, so that's fine. So that should stay pretty well maintained and updated then. So that's all good. So what images should be displayed? Well, we're going to say images from our images collection. And so that would in theory at the minute show every image ever, but of course we only want to specify images which have a relationship with the current apartment. In other words, this current apartment's images is what we should show first. You can do some stuff around sorting. I would recommend that you do the created date newest to oldest, because this means your main image should show up first. Oldest to newest actually. So this means your main image will show up first. You've always got to think a little bit about those sortings and filters. You've got to kind of figure it out in your head. It's quite hard to talk through it and do it at the same time. You can also limit the maximum number of items, although clearly we've set a limit already of 20 in terms of how much they can upload, so you're not going to get any more than that. And so the current image will pull through. You could say don't show anything or put a placeholder if there's no image, and you can have actions when they click an image or move to another image, but I'm personally not bothered about that. You also have this slide indicator where you can do kind of dots and numbers. I'm going to do numbers. I think it works pretty well, and I'll do a little red. You could also do a green there actually. So that's going to show the pictures, but what we want to do is go ahead and add a little bit more detail. For example, we're probably going to have to add the street address. So we could actually just delete that text entirely. Oops, I didn't mean that. I meant delete the text inside it. So we could just delete the text there inside it. And if we come to our current apartment, grab the street address, now do a little comma, and we'll do the city. And this will just show it like a real address, and then we'll do the country. Again, all sorts of things you could do. You could try using country flags, for example, to give it a little bit of a look. You could do that with emojis, whatever you like. I'm going to put that there. See if I can bring it up just a little bit. There we go. And then the other thing that I want to show you, if we scroll back down to installed, if you remember from the first video, we also put in a star rating. So I'm going to grab that and put that right here as well. And there's quite a few different things you can do to configure this. So you can say, can users set a rating? You can either say yes, and that will let them click between 1 and 5 stars, or you can say no. And I'm going to say no on this screen because at this point, we've got no idea if a guest has stayed here before, so I don't want them to be able to set a rating. I just want them to be able to read the rating. And in terms of where that rating is going to come from, I'm going to go to current apartment, and of course I'm going to pick rating, which at the minute I've not set for anybody, but that will do. You can configure that you know, to any other number you want, but we'll keep it as rating. So active colour, I'm going to pick a nice little red, just keeping it in fitting, and then you can have different actions depending on when it's clicked on. For example, one of the things that we'll do later is we'll make it that when a user clicks on the star rating, it takes them to the reviews page, but we'll deal with that in a slightly later video in this series. So starting to shape up a little bit more. Let's do a little bit more text. So I'm going to say details. And this might feel a little bit design heavy, but this is probably the most detailed page that we need to do. So I'll scroll that to about there. And then what I'm going to have underneath here is just, we could have a description of the apartment. Did we save a description of the apartment? I can't remember if we actually added that. Don't think that we did. So here's a good example of, you know, when it can be quite easy, you know, when we spent a lot of time designing a database, and one of the things that I reiterated over and over again in the no-code fundamentals is clearly you have to spend time making sure you get your database as right as possible. But the other thing I also said is, look, at the end of the day, it's really hard to predict exactly what you're going to need. You can sit there and think, oh, I need this, that, and the other thing. And then when you're actually sitting building it, you'll realise you need something else. So in this case, I need a description. I don't actually have a description of the property, so I'm going to add this field into the apartment. And of course, there's a couple other things I'm then going to have to do because I need to collect that description somewhere. So if I zoom out slightly, I'll go and look for my host. What I can do is fit a description on here. So I can go to fields, I can say add a visible field, and add a description. And now, of course, because I've added some dummy data already, I might need to go and update those apartments, but I'll do that a little bit later once we've designed this page. So now that I've added description, we can of course use description as a text component here. So I'll drag that in a little bit. We'll delete the enter text, we'll go here, we'll go current apartment, and we'll go description. So this will then contain a bunch of text about, you know, what's this apartment like, what's it all about. So at this point, you can kind of design it however you want to design it. You can have a little button in here for booking a stay. You know, you can configure all of this. I'll rebuild exactly what I did on the previous demo that I showed you in the first video. So I've got my book stay button there, and then what I'm going to do is I want to make a little kind of separate area on the side where essentially I can display things like amenities and that kind of thing. I don't even have to do it as a rectangle. I mean, you can basically drag this rectangle here. You can give it a colour like the Airbnb secondary colour, and then you can put some text on top of it. I'll just show you. Move that down a little bit. So what I can do is I can grab an icon, which is in here. I can pop that there. Now occasionally you might get a situation where you're dragging something on there but it's not showing up. What to do is just pop up to this little menu and make sure that you are bringing it to the front, because occasionally when you're putting elements on top of each other like this, that can happen. But I'm going to have a little icon, and we'll basically use this for our has pool, has gym, has hot tub. So if I delete this, I can do pool. So I'll put that there, and then I'll grab a little bit of text to go right alongside it. and I'm going to call that, this place has a pool. Maybe a bit long, we'll just put has pool. So I'm just going to put has pool. And I'm going to change the text colour to show up a little bit better. So I'm going to put that as white, and that should show up much nicer. And I can do the same thing here with this icon. So I can take that colour and change the icon to white. And so I've got this little section here. I'm also going to do a couple other things. If I select back to the rectangle, I'm going to add a little bit of rounding. Let's go for 14. Why am I picking 14? It's just a guess at what's going to look good. And the other thing I'm going to do, this is a little design tip as well, anything that ends up outside the screen is not going to show up to the user. And so what I can do is I can grab this, so I've just selected that, I'm going to use my arrow key, tap that a few times, and you'll see the little box is starting to go outside the screen. So what that means is, I now have a rectangle which is rounded on one side but squared on the other because it touches right on the page. And you know, whether that's a great, you know, a great design look to have, you can debate, but it's just another wee way of doing something to give you a little bit of kind of visual distinction there, you know. So pretty interesting, but I've just used my arrow keys to kind of line these up a little bit. It looks broadly in line. Obviously if you're spending some time in this you can make it look a little bit better, but let's move on. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to create a group to make this a little bit easier to navigate. So if I select my icon and then I'm going to hold the shift key, so hold shift as if you're doing a capital, and then click has pool, and that will select both of the components, and now I can hit make a group, and I'm going to call this amenity group, because this is also my amenities, or amenities, whatever you call them. And so that will just let me move those components around together as if they were one component. But it also lets me do something else. I can now do visibility together as if they were one component. And so this is where I can decide if it should actually show up. So this will be visible if the current apartment has pool set to true. If not, it will disappear. And then what I can do is I can copy that, I can paste it and drag it down, because as you remember, Adalo always does copying and pasting on top of each other. So I can change this one now to say, oops, oh come on, has gym. And again, I'll go and select the icon. So I can come in here, I can select icon, I can change that. I can change that to hot tub, which I think there's an icon for. There it is. Sorry, I've wrote has gym, I don't want a hot tub for that. Apologies, I'll come in here, I'll pick a different icon, and this time I will look for, there's a barbell somewhere, I'm sure there's a barbell. It's down here somewhere. There's lots of icons for lots of different stuff, but there should be a little barbell somewhere. And I know there is because obviously I've made this app before. So it should just be down here. Getting to the point where I'm scrolling so long it's beginning to get awkward for everybody in the room. Where is that little icon? Probably somebody watching this has already spotted it and is kind of mentally screaming at me to scroll back up and find it. It's definitely here somewhere. Probably put a timestamp down below where you can skip this search. There we go. I knew there was a barbell. Fitness Centre. I would not have guessed that was the name of that icon. So there you go. So what I can do for this one is I'll just double check the conditional visibility. Instead of has pool, I'll now do has gym. And then of course we're going to copy one once more, and I promise you won't have to wait ages for me to find the icon this time, because obviously this is a hot tub, and so we already know that we have that icon. How does that spacing look? Looks about right. So we'll change has gym to has hot tub, and we'll come back to the group and we'll click the icon. We'll change that to hot tub. As I say, I'm not going to go in a big search again. And of course we will change the overall group's conditional visibility to, well, has a hot tub. So that way we're just starting to create a nice good looking screen. You know, is it perfect? Absolutely not. But you can kind of see it's starting to come together really, you know. I'm just going to grab that hot tub and move it out slightly from the icon. And there you go. You can do the same thing with your number of bedrooms, although it'll look slightly odd. Let me show you. So if I do number of bedrooms, so no of bedrooms, actually we won't do that, we'll do something slightly different. Let me show you this. So we'll come in, we'll say what is the number of bedrooms, and then we'll just put a little icon next to that as well. So I've got the number of bedrooms. Now remember, even though it's writing out this big long piece of text, actually the bedrooms is going to be one single character. It's going to be, or it might be two, but it's likely going to be something like 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms. And of course, we are not going to write that entire word out. We're just going to show an icon to indicate it's a bed. So you're going to have to play around with this one slightly to get it just right, just matching up right. But if I go here, now I know the word for bed on this icon search is hotel. This is not my first rodeo. So I'll set that to white. I'll also set this text to white. So clearly the text is expanding beyond the box. It looks really ugly at the minute, but I promise you as soon as it comes live it'll look a bit better. The other thing to do is just use your arrow key and try and get those matching up, because the top of the box is where the number will show up. So we'll do that again. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just pay attention in a wee second when we do a preview, because that'll make a lot more sense. Now it's quite hard to move this second one just because the box is so small, but I move that over to there, and we'll say instead of being number of bedrooms, this one is going to be the number of bathrooms. And we'll go and copy our logo again, we'll paste that, move that across again, just Control C, Control V. Is that roughly in line? Maybe use my arrow keys just to nudge it. You're always going to be using arrow keys for little adjustments. I'm just going to use a hot tub logo for this one again, because I've already had a good look and there's not a good bath one, so there we go. So that's going to, now again, it looks like it's coming off the screen and you're thinking, now what have you done there? But it will show up X number of bathrooms, X number of bedrooms, or the other way around. So that will work that way. So now is probably a good time to just dive in and check if this is working. And I'm going to show you one other thing we need to do just before we go and do that, which is here on the home page. Now, if you look here where it says screen navigation type, this is going to dictate which screen your user begins on. If you wanted to make a different welcome screen that came before the sign up page, you could do that by setting another screen as a welcome screen. And of course, if they're logged in, they're always going to come to the home screen. But we've got 2 home screens because we've got a host one. So what we're going to do is, by selecting the screen, we can set an action which happens when a user visits the screen. And so I can add another action. I can link them to the host home, and of course I can specify, just like we did on the login, to only do this if the logged in user is a host. So if that's set to true, it'll take them to host home. If not, that action won't run and they'll stay here because they must be a guest if they are not a host, guest, rent, or whatever you want to call them. So we'll set that there, and then let's hit preview. Now I'm almost certain there was something else I said I needed to change before I loaded this up, but I can't remember what it is. So now obviously that sent me to the host home, and you can see the new apartments I've uploaded. That's because I'm logged in as a host. So I'm going to log out and create a new account, and just tap my little log out button there, and then let me just preview again, and that should kick me out. You'll get a little bit of odd behaviour sometimes when you are working with this, because it's a web-based preview. It shouldn't happen in your own app. So I'll just go to that's me, hit sign up. Of course it's going to ask me to upload a picture. I've already got it in there because this is the same picture I uploaded earlier. So again, because it's on a website, it's just going to default add on there. Remember, when your users are using this kind of thing won't happen. But we've come here, now nothing's showing up at the minute because I've not done a search, so there's nothing that matches the filter. But if I go and type in London, then immediately all these flats are going to show up, and I can click them and it will just immediately take me into the flats. Now clearly there's a couple of issues, don't worry too much about that. I can drag these, by the way, and swipe them. I'm doing that with my mouse. Clearly on a phone that is a lot easier, but that's just me trying to swipe it with a cursor, which obviously doesn't work nearly as well as a phone. You can put arrows in, mind you. So yeah, one of the things I wanted to point out is this is looking a little bit weird, and it can depend on a few things. Adalo's support for responsive design at the minute is not amazing. You know, sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. It kind of depends on the exact look and feel of your page. You know, you can see, for example, back here, this page looks perfect. Everything's proportional, everything's relevant. Whereas here, when I've tried to specify a few details closer together, Adalo is trying to make a guess of where these items should be based on the size of this screen, because this screen is on an iPhone Pro, which is a bit bigger than the screen I was designing for there. But and you know, if I go into Pro Max, that will change it again as well. You know, if I come on here, that changes it. If you look, you've actually got the different sizes of the screens here, and that will give you a little bit more room to play with. Now, it's not always perfect. You are 100% going to have to play around with this, but this says 375 by 812 is the iPhone Pro size. So what I can do is I can come to my apartment details, and I can go to edit styles, and I can actually change the width that I've got to work with. So 375 is right, but I can change the height. And that's just going to make the screen a little bit bigger and let me play around with it. So all I'm going to do here is just move stuff up and down slightly, and then when I go into preview that, it should start to look a little bit better already. Now clearly the little rectangle is small, and that's fine because obviously pool and hot tub are not ticked. That's why only one of them is showing up. And of course I don't have a description, so that's not showing up either. But all of this is pretty easy to play with, so you can move this around, and then the other thing I can do, what one was this called? This was tower something. So I can come into my apartments, I can just edit. Now clearly a host would already have put this description in, but we added this data before we added the description, therefore I've got to come and edit it. So I'm just going to say, this is a cool apartment looking over the bridge. And then let's go back in, preview, and we'll get an idea of exactly how that design looks. And there you go. So we've got a description showing up. Does it all look perfect? No, you would want to play around with the fonts, you'd want to play around with sizes, you want to mess around with it. But broadly, there we go. We've got the bones of our apartment details. So that's all working. So what we're going to do in the next video will be a little bit shorter. We'll just go through, we'll turn this book stay into an actual booking. I'll show you my brief system there, and we'll also connect up Stripe and look at taking our first payment.